West Cumbria Domestic Violence, also known as the Freedom Project, is an organisation where we support families, victims and perpetrators as well, and their children who've been victims or been part of domestic violence in any way. Domestic violence has an enormous impact on adults, children and extended families. People that become involved, it affects them emotionally, it can affect work environments, it can affect them at home, it can affect them at school. It's ageless, classless. A lot of people think that only certain types of people be involved in domestic violence, but we find it's very, very classless. And we get people from all walks of life coming through our organisation. I think a lot of people aren't really aware about what domestic violence is. Domestic violence isn't just somebody giving somebody else a good punch. Domestic violence can be between husband and wife, which is traditionally what people may think, but it also can be between mothers and sons, fathers and sons, brothers and sisters, uncles, aunties, grandmas, children. We've often had parents come to us for help because their children are becoming violent for various reasons. So it affects so many people, and it's also not just the physical violence. We have the emotional side of it. It affects people in an emotional way, where you can walk on eggshells. The children aren't happy. The children will lie in bed listening to the parents arguing. Then there can be violence where the children have sometimes become involved. I've had children I've worked with that have actually been stabbed by an aggressive partner attacking the mother, and they've tried to interfere and tried to protect the parent. So it has a vast impact on the way of life of a family. Bullying is certainly part of an abusive relationship, abusive behaviour. Bullying is usually seemed to be mostly in schools, and that does happen a lot in schools, but also it can be within families. The problem with bullying is that if a child is being bullied at home, sometimes you see the bullying behaviour continue at school. They can either become a victim or perpetrator of bullying. Children often, if they're living in an environment where they see a model of behaviour, that often can be the only model that they know to work with. So if they grow up in an abusive household, it can quite often happen that they will also grow up and have an abusive relationship themselves, or become part of one without even realising. And that's where we come in, because we need to educate people about how to stop the cycle of abuse. And behind me there are a couple of notices that will explain how the cycle of abuse works. But aside from the counselling we do to support people, we also run groups. We run a women's group to support the victims, and we also run a perpetrators group to help them, I suppose you could put it, see the error of their ways and explain to them what's going on and help them to mend their relationships. It's not all about separating people in abusive relationships. Sometimes it's building a better relationship, and that is better for the children as well. Last year, we had 123 children referred to our project, and these are just the children that have been referred. What we also have to remember is these children have siblings as well. So the number that are affected, along with that 123, could be a great deal more. And so far for this year, in the last few months, we've had 59 referrals alone, and we haven't even got to the end of the year yet, so that could actually be a lot more than last year. The grants are really important to us. What the grants do is they enable us to keep up the service, the counselling service to the children and support them. And aside from just supporting the children, we also support the families, because it's a holistic thing. We can work with the children, but we also need to ensure that the family lives are getting better for the children as well. So it's a package, but the money has really helped us. Without the grants we get from Cash for Kids and obviously other organisations as well, we just couldn't do the work we're doing.
Is there more children that need help, that if you had more money you could get?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, yes. We haven't really scratched the surface of it. There are an awful lot more children out there. We're trying our hardest to raise money to start a children's group as well, so that the children can understand they're not the only ones that feel like that, and they're not the only ones that have that abuse in their lives, and that they're not alone. I mean, that's really important. And also with the groups, we can continue working with them for a longer time. Sometimes we're restricted to how long we can work with a family purely due to funding, and we don't really like to have a cut-off point, but sometimes we have to, because otherwise such a large waiting list will build up, and we don't have the resources to pay for extra counsellors at the moment. It's very difficult for me to give you specific cases, but I have one in mind particularly, that I could maybe give you a bit of an overview of how it's helped. For instance, some children have been very concerned about maybe visiting parents who've been abusive to them in the past, and by talking about it and by understanding what's happening and by giving the children coping mechanisms, then it's made contact with parents who have been aggressive a lot easier. In general, we don't promote that children don't see the families, because I think that would be wrong. What we try to do is make it a good experience, and we've done that in many cases for some of the children. Also, the other thing that's really important is children sometimes in abusive households and relationships don't know who to talk to, and what we do is give them somewhere where they can talk, feel safe, talk about things that are worrying them, concerning them, and therefore the impact of that is that their lives have turned around. We've seen progress in schools, we've seen better school attendances, we've seen confidence, better relationships with their peers. There's a whole range of different behaviours, and this is confirmed by schools, by parents, by other carers within the family. So we often do outcomes to find out how our work is going with the children, and this often proves to be the case. Please just keep supporting us, because without organisations like ours, then there will be many, many children out there suffering severe emotional harm and not knowing where to turn to, who to speak to, and where to get some support. Yes, and we would really like to thank Thomas Cook, because at Christmas time, Thomas Cook made funds for a flight available, and we took some children on a flight to find Santa, where we took some children to Newcastle Airport, and we boarded a plane. And I'm terrified of flying, but I had to go. And Santa landed on the plane. Not really, but he did. And he came into the cockpit, and the children were absolutely amazed. And we're so grateful to them for that, and also for the lovely presents they gave the children afterwards. Of course, yes. I mean, the money was given to us. It was made available from Cash for Kids, and thanks very much to the listeners for making this possible. I would just like to thank everybody on behalf of West Cumbria Domestic Violence and the Freedom Project, and all the children and families that we are supporting. Thanks very much for your help, and thanks for donating.